Welcome to the Widowed Mom Podcast, episode 264, Widows Unfiltered, an interview with Christy O'Neil.
Welcome to the Widowed Mom Podcast, the only podcast that offers a proven process to help you work through your grief, to grow, evolve, and create a future you can truly look forward to. Here's your host, Master Certified Life Coach, Grief Expert, Widow, and Mom, Christy St-Germain.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. Okay, I just finished this interview with Christy. I have composed myself. I am no longer crying. So I really hope that you love this interview. I know you're going to. I for sure did. I get to work with the best women on the planet. My clients are amazing. I'll just say that. So Christy is real, she is relatable, and she just has a story that I think you're going to appreciate hearing because you're going to see yourself in her. You're going to feel hopeful after you listen to her story. And yeah, so I'll just shut up and you can listen. Here's my interview with Christy. All right. Welcome, Christy. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast.
I'm excited too, Christa. How are you?
I'm good. Hopefully no one will hear the chaos of the mowing that is happening in my neighbor's house right now. It's
no distractions.
No distractions. It's inevitable though. So
yeah.
Well,
totally.
Listen, we were talking before we hit record, and I was saying that one of the things I love about doing these interviews is just giving people the opportunity to tell their story in a way that other people can hear and other people can relate to. Because at least I know for me, especially early on in widowhood and after Hugo died, I didn't really know any widows, definitely not widows my age. And it's so depressing when you go online and all you see are people who are still talking about how sad they are and how unhappy they are and how they cry every day. And so the more stories that we can tell that are real and human and not polished, but like real and human, and also give people hope, the better. So I'm excited to have you for that reason.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
I'm excited to be here.
Instead of me introducing you, let you introduce yourself. So tell listeners who you are, where you live, anything you would like them to know about Christy.
Okay. Well, my name is Christy O'Neil, and I live in Northwest Montana, up near Glacier National Park. I worked out here my summers in college and fell in love with the area. And shortly after I graduated, I always say the day after, but it was close to the day after I graduated. I packed up and came out here, moved out here, got in the car, drove, and decided to work one more summer in the park, and then was just open to see what was going to happen. I ended up getting a job here as a silversmith, making jewelry, and I ended up staying. And so now it's been 27 years. I met Rob. See, I moved out here in 1997, and I met Rob in 2003, painted my house. And
he painted your house? Is that what you said?
Yeah, he was a house painter. And I had seen him around town, and I always just thought he was so cute. But I didn't really know his name. He worked at a few places that I would go to, but then I didn't really know where else he was. And then somebody had recommended a house painter to me, and I didn't know that guy was also the house painter. So when he showed up at my house, I was like, oh my gosh.
That's great.
So that's how we met. And then we got married in 2007, and then we had Mason in 2009. Mason is 14 now, amazing kid. And yeah, our parents moved out here after we got married, or actually my mom and dad moved out here before we got married, but then his parents moved out here. So we had family around us. And and from there, the way I became a widow, we were in COVID, and it was in November of 2020. And we were meeting some good friends for a run. And we had decided on a trailhead, and we drove out. We picked up our friends and we drove out to the trailhead. And Rob was kind of holding his stomach, kind of tapping it. And I looked over and I said, "Are you okay?" He said, "I don't know. I feel a little sick to my stomach, a little lightheaded." I was like, "Oh, well, let's turn around." And he was like, "No, let's just keep going." So we got to the trailhead. We got out. He was like, "I think I feel okay." And our friends were like, "Okay, well, we can turn around, whatever you want to do." And he's like, "No, let's walk a little." So we started walking. We were just walking, talking, laughing. And then he said, "Okay, team, let's go." He's like, "I'm ready to run." So they started running. I kind of bring up the rear and was walking. And it was interesting because they were going to do a loop
Mm-hmm.
and I took almost an immediate right. And then I thought to myself, he didn't feel good. What if they don't make it all the way around the loop? Because I was going to meet them and then kind of walk back. So I turned around and started following the way they went. And just a couple minutes later, I see him coming back down, and he was holding his stomach, and he was like, "I think I want to go home and lie down." I said, "Okay." And so we walked back down the trail, didn't really think anything of it, got in the car and started driving away, but we were talking. And the interesting thing about the couple that we were with was he was also his doctor, and his wife was a nurse or is a nurse. And so I said, I remember even saying, "Do you want me to turn on some music or the news or anything like that?" And he said, "Oh no, I don't want to listen to the news or anything like that." He's like, "I don't want to get, my heart racing or something like that." And I remember the doctor said, "Well, sometimes a little anxiety can calm the stomach." And then we all laughed and right over on me. And I just thought, I looked at him and I kind of slowed down. I said, "What are you doing?" And then after that, things at first happened very calmly. Dr. Todd was very calm, very reassuring, said, "I think he's having a seizure." I'm just going to put his feet up. And then his wife kind of came around and just kind of directed me into the back seat. And she started driving. And he was just kind of checking him out and checking his pulse and kind of repeating things to his wife. And I just was kind of watching all of this happen, but not really understanding. And then we just kept driving into town. And then things got a little more serious. And he started CPR, started with rescue breaths, and then started with CPR. And we got to the hospital. And the amazing thing was, I didn't know what, everything was happening so fast, but, he was telling me to call the hospital. And of course, it came over my speakerphone, and he just told them what he needed, who he was bringing in, how old he was. And it just, when we got there was a team waiting for us, and everything just, they just took him right in and they worked on him for a while. But at that point, there was nothing they could do. And it ended up being a myocardial bridge. And it's a heart defect, unbeknownst to us and his family. Did not know, but it's where your main aorta tunnels through your heart. And sometimes it just kind of blips in and comes out the side. His went all the way through and out the bottom. And I think over his life, his heart and his everything else learned to route his blood in a different way. And there was just nothing that could have been done. And I believe, I was told that his health is what kept him alive, because he was healthy, 49-year-old male. I mean, hiked, skinned up our local ski hill the morning before. I mean,
yeah, this was not like a new to working out situation. This was a normal thing that he would do, is to go on a hike
totally
like that, or a run like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, hour later, got the news, and it was, and in that time, so we left Mason at home. He was 11. And on my way to the hospital, I had texted some friends to come get him and just say, we're bringing Rob to the hospital. We think he's having a seizure. And so they went and got Mason. And then after that, it was just, leaving the hospital, leaving Rob there, and then going home and telling Mason. So,
yeah, that's about the worst conversation you ever want to have.
Yeah. Yeah. It was horrible.
Yeah.
But yeah.
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 What when you think back about whatever you remember about early grief, I think sometimes it's like a
Yeah.
complete parts of it are very clear and parts of it often are very blurry, but what was it like for you compared to what you thought it might be like?
I was surprised about going through the motions. I was surprised, like, I mean, I wasn't sleeping, but I would get up and I remember every morning just walking down our long hallway and turning the corner and building the fire and making the coffee and going through these motions, feeling very out of body, but also thinking it was just this weird kind of, weird shock. I mean, there was the sadness and I had the moments of just crushing sadness and crying and then there was just this weird robotic movement doing things and receiving people to my house and
Mhm.
talking about things very surreal, talking about getting meal plans and everybody telling stories and then trying to plan a celebration of life during
Mm.
COVID and like I don't know, it just felt very out of body, but then wanting to stay present. And I mean, I remember asking Rob's doctor, Dr. Todd, can my body be okay without eating? Will I be sustainable? Like, I was so worried about how because Mason just watched us all the time, and
Mhm.
I knew I wasn't going to be able to eat. I knew I wasn't going to be able to sleep. And he's like, your body's going to be okay.
Mm.
You're going to be fine. I remember drinking a lot of smoothies because I didn't know what else to eat,
Same.
Yeah, people would bring me smoothies if they came over to see me. And I remember this conversation that Rob and I had about a month before he died because I had car trouble. I just purchased a new car
Mhm.
and it was a lemon and the transmission went out. And I was very upset by it. And Rob told me that Mason asked him if I cried. And he said, yeah, mommy cried a little bit. And he goes, was she upset about the car? And he's like, yeah, but it's fine. It's just a car. And Rob told me that. And he said he just hates thinking or seeing us upset. And that was going through my head when Rob died,
Mm.
was that Mason just hates seeing me upset. So I remember pulling him into the bathroom and because I was really crying and he was watching me and I got on my knees and I got in front of him and I said, I know you don't like this, but you are going to see me grieve your father and you are going to see me cry. And I want you to know that I am still here with you. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not falling apart, but this is what we need to do. We need to grieve your father. And he was like, okay. And, we're both
Ugh.
doing this as we're crying, looking at each other. And that kind of started this, I don't know, just this thing between the two of us that we kind of just were like, okay, we're going to grieve. We're going to do this.
Mhm.
So, but yeah,
What
it
a
was,
gift. What a gift you gave him to normalize that
mm,
instead of putting pressure on yourself to hide it.
hmm yeah. And I think it was, I didn't know what I was doing. But I couldn't hide that from him. And I don't know, I remember laying there one night and I just remember just saying, we lost the love of our life. We
Yeah.
lost him. And he was like, Mom, he was like, okay. He was like, come on. He's like, we're going to do this together, right? And I said, yeah, okay. And he lifted me up. He grabbed my hands and we just sat across from each other and we grabbed each other's hands. And he's like, okay. He's like, let's breathe together. And I said, okay. And so we just looked at each other and we both cried and we just both started breathing in rhythm
Mm.
together. And then that kind of just started this almost like a check in with each other. And even to this day, I'll check in with him or he'll be saying something with me and I can tell he's having a moment. And I
Mhm.
just look at him and we nod. And it's like witnessing each other and
Yeah.
acknowledging each other, but not having to say anything, but
Uh-huh.
just knowing, okay, yeah, you're having a moment.
Yeah, no
Um,
fixing, just witnessing,
no fixing.
which is what we need.
Yeah. Now, I do have to say with that, I still tried to fix, you know, of course, if he started first, I would really try. And I remember one night he was upset and I just was like, Daddy didn't want to leave us, Daddy, and he had a heart condition, and I was going through the trying to make him feel better, try to make him feel better, try to make him feel better. And I didn't even know what he was doing, but he had a tutor who was beyond amazing. And which I found out later, she taught him how to tap and she taught him how to, I know. I did not know that she did this. And she taught him how to calm himself by finding his vagus nerve.
I
And
love her. And she was a
I
tutor?
know she was his tutor. And he was lying there doing this. And I was trying to talk him through it. And he grabbed me and he just said, shh. And he just shushed me. And I saw it as I did something wrong.
Oh.
I was, I just was like, oh my gosh, I'm not helping him. And he was doing this thing. And I laid there and I watched him cry himself to sleep. And I, of course, was crying. But later he said he was just trying to calm his nervous system. And, and then of course
He's 11.
he was 11.
Holy cow.
And I mean, it's, about the tapping. I remember when I decided to work with you, I was telling him about it and we were driving and I said, I'm going to work with a life coach who specializes in grief with widowed moms. And he was like, oh, Mom, that's awesome. That's really good. And he's like, what is she going to do? And I said, well, she's going to help me through my grief. And I think she's going to have tools for me. And I said, one thing that I know she does is she teaches her widows how to tap. And he goes, oh, my favorite is under the eye. And I remember just looking at him and going, do you tap? And he was like, that's what Miss Cara taught me how to do. And I was like, I mean, things that I think in those beginning stages, I was just so, I don't know, unaware of what he was learning, what people were sharing with him. And I remember just crying with her and just like thanking her for just the gift that she gave him. And, it was as hard as it was as an 11-year-old boy having these tools and having to use these tools because of this tragedy, how grateful I was that he had them and learned them before I did.
Yeah. So that's amazing. It gives me such hope too for future generations that at some point they're going to be just prepared with this toolbox that we didn't have.
Yeah.
So how did you come across, was it the podcast? Tell me how our paths crossed.
So after losing Rob, a couple of people had said, I have a great therapist, and I didn't have a therapist. So I found a grief therapist. And then a woman who had lost her husband, I would say about a year or two before Rob, reached out to me. I didn't know her. And she sent me a box of, I think it was a box of cookies or something, and wrote a note, said, I have been in your shoes. Please reach out if you ever need to talk. And I didn't at first, but then when I did, she had started listening to your podcast. And this was a year and a half after Rob passed away and my therapist retired. And I was like, okay. And she was like, I think you're going to be okay. You seem like you're doing well. And I was like, really? Okay.
Are we sure?
I don't know about this, and she's like, if you want another therapist, you just let me know. I will help you find one. And I kind of didn't know what to do, but I kind of had this idea like, okay, I'm going to try this, I'm going to find joy again. And I just wasn't feeling good. I wasn't feeling like I wanted to feel. I was confused. I just was confused about how I felt and how maybe, and I was putting a lot of pressure on myself of how I should feel. So she told me about the podcast. So I started listening to the podcast and I was like, oh, I was not a podcast listener.
Oh, really?
And no. And Rob was. I mean, every night he was loading his iPod and, and telling me all about these podcasts that he was listening to. And sometimes, when we traveled, we'd listen to them. And so I couldn't believe when I listened to you, and I think the most immediate was like, I could hang out with this girl. Like,
That's a nice compliment.
I just felt like an instant connection because of just because of everything that you were saying. I was like, that's exactly how I felt. That's what I did. I got out a journal and I started writing to Rob every day, every night. And I just felt this connection. And then I ended up joining a 3-day seminar, and it was Happier Holidays. It was in October. So I had been listening to the podcast, and then I did that and did the worksheets, and I liked doing the work. And then of course, I was talking to friends about it. I was like, there's this program, and I was going back and forth. And then I think what really did it for me was I had 2 friends say to me, Christy, I will be here for you at 3:00 in the morning. You can call me. I will help you do whatever you need. I want to be there for you. I want to listen to you, but I do not know what it's like. And I just, one of my friends was like, these women will. And I think it's going to be valuable for you. And, because we all want to help you. But we don't know what it's really like. And I was like, okay, yep. So I think that was just a little extra push, was seeing all of them just rooting for me too. And I was like, okay. And then I had my phone interview, and then I signed up.
Back in the days when we required phone interviews.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But it was good, it was. And then, I started in December. And I even think from the minute I started, I was just like just getting all the information and watching like the introduction video. It was like, I was really proud of myself. It was like, I just kept getting emotional because I was like, yes, like, you did this for you, and I was really proud of myself for signing up. And
did that feel out of character when you say, like, did that feel out of character to do something for yourself?
I think at that point, yes. Yeah, I think so. I think investing in myself, yes. And I think that's a huge part of what I've learned through this program is, investing in myself and self-compassion. What was that? That was a huge part of it too, is giving this to myself, and giving myself permission. That was the biggest thing, I think, too, is like, that was foreign to me for sure. So.
And what did you most need to give yourself permission about?
I think that I knew I wanted to find joy again. I wanted to love my life again. And giving myself permission to say, if you want extraordinary, if you want this, it's okay. It's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to give this to yourself and ask for help. And I think that was the main thing. The first time I got coached in December when we just did our group, I remember being like, I'll get coached. I mean, I was so nervous, but I was like, let's get this started, I think, and being nervous. But I remember you specifically saying, after we talked about what I was feeling and what was coming up for me, I remember you saying, I will help you. And I just thought, okay, I believe you.
Yeah.
And so, I think just wanting it for myself. And I think at the time, I wasn't thinking about it in this way, but loving myself enough to give it to myself. That was foreign to me. And that came later in the program, like really learning to love and take care of myself.
Yeah.
That was huge for me.
I always think this is a trend that I notice. I think most people come thinking that the work we're going to do is just related to the loss. And yes, that is true. There's work to do that is related to the loss, but there's so much more usually. that we didn't even know, beliefs we've been carrying around about ourselves, ways we've been treating ourselves, talking to ourselves, what we've been allowing ourselves to want, to have, to pursue, right? All of that stuff that's actually, it's been there for decades and it's in the way. Yeah. So it doesn't surprise me to hear that, but it's usually not what people think they're getting into.
No. Yeah, it's so much more. And it's so, I mean, I know you and I talked about it, like when I said it's just multifaceted. There's so much more, and there's so many beliefs and thoughts that I had coming into it. I mean, thoughts that I believed to be fact and not even realizing until going through this, So, yeah.
What's it been like because you said your friends were so honest with you and you're like, hey, we love you. And also we don't know this life experience. What's it been like to be around other women who haven't gone through exactly what you've gone through, but who have lost their person and have been through something similar?
I mean, that's the even bigger gift, is finding that connection through our loss. When I came to your house last June for the June celebration event, I remember seeing the email and seeing all the women that were attached to that women. And I was like, I get to meet Alexis. I get to meet Jamie, and here I've only seen them through the Zoom and supported them through Zoom, and they supported me. And I learned so much through them and with them. And even if what they were going through didn't apply to me, it was just this connection. So I remember being in the Wichita airport and seeing Madeline and being like, like, I know who that woman is, and I think Jamie and I connected in Denver, and, I'm looking for her, and, only seeing her through Zoom, but that was an instant connection. And it was like, it's done so much. I mean, we've all kept in touch. We all know, the struggles with having, raising children. We all, and we're all different ages, we all have different age children, but that has been truly amazing. And I feel like, I know it's lifelong, and it was such an interesting feeling. I mean, a couple of us just met in Florida just to get together at one of our friends' homes there. And it was such a great time together. And then we came home, and it was like, wow, it was like that realization is these women wouldn't be in my life if this didn't happen.
Yeah.
And it's such a weird and beautiful thing at the same time, it's like, oh, right. And I can't imagine not having that support. So that was the other gift. Yeah. I think I was thinking, okay, this coaching program it's going to help me find joy. It's going to help me love life. But I'm like, I don't know how, when I first started, how it's all going to work out. But I didn't even realize what kind of connection it was going to bring to my life as well. And that's been really amazing. So thank you.
Thank you. It's the same for me, right?
Yeah.
It's the same for me. I never would have realized. And I will say, like, this is what I get to do now for a living. I'm looking at the picture that you made, by the way, on my wall.
Oh, yeah.
The rest of the world can't see it, but Christy's an amazing artist. And there's this picture that she sent me, and everybody who was at the June event that she was talking about earlier, but it's like all these little pieces. I don't know, maybe, gosh, I don't know, 20 or 30 like little snippets of pieces of that weekend. It's so cool. But like, that gets to be my life now. Am I grateful that Hugo died so that I could have this? No. Do I love that this is what I get to do and these are the types of women that I get to work with? Yes. But still don't have to be grateful that it happened.
No.
And also grateful for everything that's happened since, or most of it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think I love what you say about life being that 50-50. And I am by no means grateful that this happened to me, of course, but I am finding amazing. I am finding joy and love, and I am excited for my future. And I wish it never happened, but it's just Yeah, that's the
But it did, and here we are.
here
Yeah.
we are.
And I would say, like, just kudos to you too, right? You're not just finding joy, like you're actively creating it, right? And maybe some of
Mhm,
it feels like
mhm.
it's just kind of happening, but I want to make sure you take credit for all the work that you've done, all the patterns that you've changed, for showing up on as many calls as you have and like been as vulnerable as you've been. You know, you earned that, what you
Well,
have
and
created.
I think that was a huge shift for me as well, was I want to find my joy. Where is that joy? And I think before I started your program, I was like, okay, I'm going to go find my joy. Okay. A big part of my happiness left with Rob. And that's the way I thought. Like, okay, a chunk of my happiness and joy left with Rob. But I'm going to go do these things that bring me joy, right? I'm going to go hiking. I'm going to go paddleboarding. I'm going to go
Mhm.
spend time with friends. And then I would go do these things. And then I would be like, okay, I don't know. I don't feel it. It's not
Mhm.
bringing me joy. And it was confusing because it was that whole living and depending on the action to bring
Mhm.
me joy. And that's where I was placing that joy, was that it's going to come from that. And then when it didn't happen, I was like, what's going on? Why
Mhm.
was there something wrong with me? And then after joining your program and talking to you about these and getting coached on how can my life be beautiful again, how can this happen, and realizing, and just you pointing out, you said you're the one that created this, not Rob. I mean, we feel like when these
Mhm.
amazing men get ripped from us, it's because of them that made us happy. And it's like the same thing we say, like, I don't ever look to Mason and be like, you're the one that has to make me happy. I
Yeah.
mean, the poor child, that's a huge responsibility,
Mhm.
and to be, for me to say, I'm only gonna be happy if my child makes me happy. And I think that was another thing that the coaching really opened up for me, was no, I created my happiness. It was the way I thought about Rob. It was the way I thought about our relationship,
Mhm.
and the way I wanted to cultivate it more because of the way we thought together. So
Yeah.
that was huge for me as well.
Yeah, because if we're always looking for something outside of us or some sort of action, it can be so very frustrating when we still
Hmm.
don't feel how we wanna feel. And
Hmm.
until we figure out we are the ones creating it, we don't have the ability to change it until we figure that
Right.
out. So, yeah, I'm glad.
Right.
I'm glad that was a valuable teaching for you. If you could
Hmm.
go back in time, knowing what you know now, like if you could go back and talk to yourself maybe shortly after Rob died, or talk to another widow, shortly after their person died, what would you want to say?
I would say give yourself more grace than you even thought possible. I would say, I mean, the self compassion was really hard for me, but all these things, I felt like in the beginning I was really good at feeling sad. Okay, I can feel sad. But I did not like fear. I did not like
Mm,
anxiety. I did not like these other feelings that I would
mhm,
have. I would judge myself on them pretty harshly, and I would push them away, and I would say, stop it, stop, go away. I've got this.
mm,
And I think for me, thinking, one thing that really helped me was just think of it as a friend telling you their story.
mm,
And I remember you did that for me. You said if there was a friend that came in to your house and said, I have this picture of my family and three of the people in the family are gone. And would you tell her to stop it and stop feeling that? And I'm so scared that somebody else is going to be ripped away from me again. And because I was dealing a lot with fear and anxiety and that. And I remember saying, oh, I would say, oh my gosh, I feel the same way. I feel
mhm,
the same way. And you were like, okay, so you can give yourself compassion, or give them compassion, but not yourself. And I remember brain breaking again
mm,
and being like, you're right. And I just think, have that compassion for yourself. You're going to have so many more feelings, and there's nothing wrong with you. And just sitting with those is hard. Oh, as hard as it is, that was pretty pivotal for me.
Mm.
Just even recently in some self-coaching was just sitting with those feelings that I did not want around and just having those huge shifts. So I would just say, just love yourself and give yourself compassion and ask for help. I think that was the other thing. And people were helping without me asking, which was amazing. And then I kind of got to this point too where, I needed help with things, but it's kind of like the first acute stage was kind of over. People were no longer stopping by all the
Mm-hmm.
time. And then I do remember a good friend of ours, who's a good friend of Rob's, was coming over and just doing yard work.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, you don't have to be here. It's okay. It's the weekend. It's okay. I can do this. And I remember he just sort of stopped me in my tracks and he said, listen, this is how I'm healing. And I said, I remember standing on my porch and looking at him. And he said, let me help you because this is how I heal. And I was like, oh, right. It's about them too, and not just me. And that I was like, okay, people want to help. People want to help and they don't know what to do. And so that kind of eased it up for me too, was just ask for help because I think people search for a platform to help you in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And it was hard for me to accept that at first.
Yeah. Very rarely do people actually express it in the way that he did. I'm so glad that he
I
had that
know.
self-awareness and that he said that to you, but I really do. It is like people feel powerless and they hate it and they don't
Yeah,
want to feel powerless. They want to feel like they're being helpful and yeah.
right. Yeah, it definitely it just kind of took my breath away almost like,
Mhm.
oh, I never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
So it changed the way I thought about how this was crushing other people too, and then
Mhm.
wanting them to just do something, give me a job, just,
Yeah.
you know, so yeah.
Such value in that. Is there anything you would hope that we would talk about that we haven't talked about yet?
I would say, I think one of the things that I think was and has been really huge for me is my thoughts cause my feelings. That was a huge shift for me and still. And I think what I know MGO has done for me has given me a toolbox of all these tools of calming my nervous system, of writing things down, seeing it in black and white, and these thoughts that I believed were fact, and how I can choose to change those.
Mhm.
And this just happened recently. I was dealing with some anxiety. I was having some health issues. Anxiety was living in my body a lot, and I
Mhm.
did not like it. And I remember one night I thought, okay, I am going to sit with it and I'm going to get out a piece of paper and I'm going to write about it. And I remember sitting down and I said, okay, if you're going to be here, anxiety, this is what we're going to do. We're going to sit here. And I just wrote all this out. We are going to sit here and we're going to do this together. And I said, I want you to see what I've done. And so I started writing down all these things. And I said, okay, I asked for help. I've been tapping every day. I've been meditating. I've been getting coached. I found a new therapist. I found an acupuncturist. And I started writing all these things. And then this is what my brain did. I wrote down, but Rob was my calm. And it stopped me in my tracks. I sat there and I looked at it. And there it was in black and white. I had written everything that I had done for myself. And then I still came back and said, but Rob was my calm. And I said, wait. And then I wrote that down. I said, wait a minute. I said, look what you just did. Brain, brains are mean. But I was like, look what you just did. And I said, no, even when Rob was alive, I mean, that was kind of the beautiful cadence of our relationship was
Mhm.
that I was more of the woo and he was
Mhm.
more of my calm. And I even said that when he was alive, Rob was my calm.
Mhm.
And I believed it. And I've been believing it all this time. And I wrote down in big letters, no, I am my calm.
Yes.
And I sat there and I looked at it and I thought, gosh, even now I wasn't seeing everything that I had done for myself and was doing for myself because I was still believing this thought and putting all of that into him, and where he was my calm. I'm not saying he wasn't. He did have a very gentle way of helping me find calm. But I think that was a beautiful thing about seeing it in black and white and about self-coaching and about sitting with this feeling that I didn't want to feel was, no, I can do this. And I am my calm. And that statement right there has just shifted. And I'm still going to have anxiety. I'm still going to have fear. But I feel like I also have this extraordinary toolbox and an extraordinary support squad. That was another thing I wrote down. And this life is, I don't know, I'm excited. I look forward to what's around the corner. And I know that I can fully look at myself in the mirror and tell myself that I love myself. I've never been able to do that, So that's just been huge.
Get me on these interviews and you make me cry, Christy.
I'm sorry. I'm making myself cry.
Seriously though, it makes me cry because that's exactly what I want. That's exactly what I want. For you to be able to sit down and do what you did, which I'm so glad you told that story because I hadn't heard it, but also I think everyone else will benefit too, right? As you sat down and because you used the tools, then when you needed them, you could help yourself. And I wasn't there and I didn't have to be there. And you did that for yourself. You literally coached yourself. That is everything because that will serve you for the whole rest of your life.
Totally.
Right. And that is what I want. I really don't like it when people create dependencies on another human, like a coach, and so it is the highest praise to me to hear that you can now coach yourself. Not that you have to stay in masters for as long as you want. I love you. I hope you never leave. And also that is the highest compliment is to see that you could spot your own problematic thought as a thought and then change it for yourself. And I wasn't in the room. That's just,
yeah, it was just, and I remember sitting there and after I did it, it was about 11 o'clock and Mason walked out of his room and I was sitting right over here. I just had that like this aha moment. And he just looked at me and he goes, look at you.
Oh,
and I said, hi. And he said, are you okay? I said, yeah, I am. And it just was seeing that and knowing it just, we are not exempt in this life. Even because of this tragedy, things are going to happen to us.
Yes. Yes.
And it is not, I wish it was a roller skating rink where we could just go around, but it's not. And I have to remind myself that. And I have to remind myself that life is 50-50. But I have this toolbox. And if I just let myself use the tools and if I just, and it's like, oh, there she is. There's Krista reminding me that you have this tool. And just, I don't know. It was a really pivotal and I think poignant moment for me in knowing that, okay, things are going to happen to us, but I have all this and I can see in black and white what I've done. And then I can see that thought come in and how before I didn't even think about it serving me or not, and he was calm. I'm not saying that, but
I get it.
I did it too. So,
thank you so much for coming on and telling your story.
Of course. It's my pleasure. This is fun. It was really good.
Heartwarming for me to hear. I know a lot of other people will relate, and I know they will hear you and they will see themselves in you, or at least in parts of your story, and it will give them hope too. So thank you.
Welcome.
All right. Take care, Christy.
Yeah, you too, Krista.
If you like what you've been hearing on this podcast and want to create a future you can truly get excited about even after the loss of your spouse, I invite you to join my Mom Goes On coaching program. It's small group coaching just for widowed moms like you, where I'll help you figure out what's holding you back and give you the tools and support you need so you can move forward with confidence. Please don't settle for a new normal that's less than what you deserve. Go to coachingwithkrista.com and click Work With Me for details and next steps. I can't wait to meet you.